His deathbed is sensing his time in this world is waning, so he calls his pastor and he calls his immediate family to come visit him at once. His two sons, James and Mark, and his wife, Lisa. His family is standing over him in his weakened state, and he says to Mark, "Mark is my oldest son. I bequeath to you the condos by the beach and the lake houses." He then turns to James and says, "And to you, James, I bequeath the apartments in the city." And finally, he turns to his wife and says, "And Lisa, I bequeath to you the houses in the suburbs." Then he asks them to leave. And on the way out, the pastor says to Lisa, "You are so lucky to have a husband who was so rich that he was able to leave you all that property." And to that she says, "Pastor, rich, my butt. He had a paper route." Thanks, Don. Talk more about property later. Barbara Bennett of Vancouver, Washington wanted to sell. She wanted to sell an old Brothers sewing machine, so she took out an ad in her local paper's classified section. And when the ad appeared, it read simply, "Brother for sale." And worse yet, the ad appeared in the items under $50 section. There were actually a couple of calls inquiring about that ad, actually. One wanted to haggle over the price. The other caller hung up when they learned that it really wasn't a really live brother that was being offered on the market. For the record, Miss Bennett has two brothers, neither of whom is currently up for sale. And I thought of Barbara Bennett's ad when I read today's lesson many times. Jesus said, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple." Now say, what? What an outrageous teaching. This is a church that cherishes its families. So what in the world could Jesus possibly mean by this hate your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters? Oh, sure, if we're going to be honest here this morning, we do get a little bit upset with them from time to time, like the lady who was showing an insurance agent through her home. He pointed to an exquisite vase on the sideboard and asked, "Do you keep anything in that?" "Well, yes, my husband's ashes," came the reply. "Well, I'm sorry," apologized the agent. "I didn't know he was deceased." She says, "Well, he isn't. He's just too lazy to look for an ashtray." I mean, we all get frustrated, don't we? We get frustrated. Of course we do. We get frustrated with those that we love. But hate them? No way. Now, this is Luke's version of the story. And it's interesting to note that when Matthew reports Jesus' words, he softens them a bit. He softens them. In Matthew, Jesus says, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me." Well, that's better. That's better. We can see loving Jesus here more, but who could literally hate his father and his mother? Well, Lisa Brooks remembers the day she turned her back on her family. She rejected her parents, She ran away from her past the day she discovered that her parents had been members of the Nazi Party during World War II. Over the next few years, Liesl became estranged from her parents, but her rejection of them, it didn't bring her any peace. In fact, she felt a strange gulf in her life. She struggled with guilt and shame and a lack of identity. And then Liesl happened to meet a woman named Rachel. Rachel was a Jew who was also estranged from her family. Ironically, Rachel rejected her parents because they had survived the Holocaust. That may sound outrageous to us, but to Rachel, their survival was a betrayal of their Jewish identity. Together, Rachel and Liesl were able to forgive their parents and reconnect with their families. Both women found healing and peace in releasing the past and rebuilding family relationships. So it's certainly possible to hate your own family and feel virtuous about it, but rarely is it God's will for you. Now we must remember here, Jesus often spoke in hyperbole. He wanted to impact the lives of his listeners. And in this particular case, he wanted them to understand the radical nature, the commitment he was asking them to make. That's clear from the rest of the lesson. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. And then Jesus continues. None of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Say what? There he goes again. Give up all my possessions? My SUV? My widescreen TV? I mean, surely he would allow me to keep my membership at the health club. Relax. Relax. Jesus doesn't want you to sell all your possessions. He doesn't want you to get rid of your family. Some of you may be definitely in the mood to get rid of your family. But that impulse did not come from God. In the early 80s, a Michigan State University study reported that one third of 4 and 5-year-olds, a full one-third, would give up their relationship with their dad for television. That's terrible. That's terrible. But when you consider that the average employed American watches 40 hours of television a week at least, you have to wonder if some mothers and fathers don't love the idiot box more than they love their children. After one couple returned home from a family life marriage conference, the husband immediately walked into the family room, unplugged the TV, and with the cord dangling and wide-eyed kids in tow, he hugged the set and carried it to the garage. In the empty space where the television once stood, he hung a picture of the family. And their 5-year-old son sat down on the floor staring at the portrait, and then he looked up at his dad and he asked, "Does this mean that we're going to become a family?" See, the last thing that Jesus wants us to do is get rid of our families, but Jesus does want us to ask this question, where does my ultimate loyalty lie? And there are times when, you know it and I know it, there can be a decided conflict between love for family, love for possessions, and love for God. I'm here to tell you there are still families in the world today where if a son or a daughter were to become a Christian, the parents would disown their son or daughter and they'd have absolutely no further contact with them. It would be as if they died. You and I have it so easy. Our parents, most of them, were delighted, some overjoyed, when we committed our lives to Christ. But that is not universally true. It just is not. Some people have had to say goodbye to family and friends forever when they decided to follow Jesus. Now, you and I might ask if our commitment to Christ is that strong. Some of us, maybe most of us, will admit that it's not. We love the church. We support the budget, but don't ask us to decide between loyalty to those we love and our love for God. Fortunately, that's not a choice most of us are ever going to have to make, but the very harshness of Jesus' words here makes us reflect on that question. The question about possessions. The question about possessions is much easier to deal with, much easier. Most of us recognize that our possessions, they're not even ours anyways. And they never have been. They're only on loan to us. Everything ultimately belongs to God. Preached on this a few weeks ago. And so we return a portion. We return a portion of our income back to God. Not everybody tithes, but hopefully we're moving in that direction. Just a question of priorities. It's a question of loyalty. I wonder in the light of the present world what Jesus would say to us if he took the pulpit here at St. James this morning on this subject. If he were here in the flesh today, he might say that it's not love for him that's causing us to hate our families today. It's love for the world. There was a story in Time magazine titled, "Does Kindergarten Need Cops?" It told of a study done by Partnership for Children, a child advocacy group in Texas. And according to this study, angry outbursts and violence are on the rise today in kindergarten classrooms. That's right. I said kindergarten. It appears to be a trend throughout the entire country. 93% of the teachers who responded to the study said that they had seen an increase in emotional and behavioral problems in young children over the past 5 years. And what accounts for this trend? Violence in TV and video games, perhaps. But many teachers and psychologists believe that a simple lack of family time may be the biggest contributor to the problem. Moms and dads, they're working longer hours than ever. They don't have as much time to spend with their children. It's in the simple rhythms of family life that children learn socialization skills. They learn the difference between right and wrong. They learn effective ways of coping with emotions and impulses. They learn self-control. As one veteran teacher says, kids are not getting enough lap time. I certainly don't want to heap any stress upon any of the parents here. They already got lives stressful enough, but in today's materialistic world, we all have to guard against the belief that if somehow we provide our children with tons of nice things, we're meeting their primary needs. Nice things, they are never ever going to compensate for loving attention. That's the first thing Jesus might say to us. It's not loyalty to him that's the problem for most of us, that's for sure. It's loyalty to the world. The second thing he'd probably say to us is that loyalty to him usually produces more loyalty to those we love, not less. And there's one last thing that must be said in fairness to our text. Friends, if you ever have to make a choice, if you got to make a choice, your first loyalty is to God. Everything in this world belongs to God. Our possessions, the body you're in, our dreams and our hopes, even those we love, everything belongs to God. Here's where the rubber meets the road for most of us. It's easy for us to be people of God. It's too easy. We're like Job. We're like Job before he was afflicted. You remember the story. God says about Job, "Behold, a righteous man," right out of the gate. It's God who sets this up. God's first speaker. "Behold, Job, there's none righteous like him in all the east." Satan immediately says, "Well, of course he's righteous. You gave him everything. You've done everything for him. Of course he is." And in this thought-provoking drama, God allows Satan to take away from Job everything that Job prizes: his wealth, his health, his family, all those he loves. There he sits, the saddest man on earth, covered with boils, penniless, his children all dead. Never has a man suffered more than Job. Now, how does Job respond? How does Job respond to this devastation? Remember? His wife, no wonder Satan left her. His wife's advice is curse God and die. That's her advice. Curse God and die. But here's how Job responds. When word comes to Job that his children have died in a great wind that devastated his house, we read these words. "Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, fell on the ground and worshiped. He said, 'Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.'" Later, when everything he's prized is gone, including his health, Job says, "Oh, that my words were written down. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Oh, that with an iron pen and with lead they were engraved on a rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, then in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see on my side, and my eyes shall behold, and not another." Did Job hate his family? No. Did he hate his vast possessions? No. Did he hate his own body? No. But he loved God more. He loved God more. How about you? It's a choice. It's a choice that hopefully you and I are never going to have to make. Usually it's the world that comes between us and those who are dear to us, not Christ. Usually love for Christ causes us to be more loyal to our families, not less. However, if there's ever a time when we must make a choice, let's be able to say with Job, blessed be the name of the Lord. And all God's people said, Amen.